like to call the Special Services Committee meeting to order at 7:09. First item on the agenda is approval of the November 16th, 2023 Special Services minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a motion? Second, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2, enrollment data, Dr. Bryant.
You have the enrollment numbers, they're pretty consistent with the last report. I think we're down 15 students overall, but pretty consistent overall. We can continue to monitor class sizes, so. Yeah.
Any questions or comments regarding enrollment? Okay, next item, Ms. Keynes.
Right. I'm just curious, are there any pushbacks or anything about the kids that had to be reassigned from East Rochester? No?
From Nancy Loud?
I mean,
From the Nancy Loud School?
yeah,
They seem to be settled in.
everything's all,
Yes.
oh, good.
Yep.
Mr. Towns.
So looking at like the first and second grade from Chamberlain, then you look at like our next biggest school, McClellan, the numbers are, yeah, we're looking at 12 to maybe 18, but is that gonna, that's not gonna change until the new school. It's, even next year, our numbers are gonna be high at Chamberlain, correct?
Potentially, we could potentially look at reassigning sections, so as we're looking at the enrollment
Okay,
numbers.
so we can maybe next year kind of even that
Yep.
off. That's not something, because I know we moved everyone from Nancy Loud into Chamberlain. I'm just not sure that was the best decision for that school to do that, but obviously we got to live with it for the rest of this year. But I think that's something that should be adjusted next year.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that as well, looking at trying to make them a little bit more equitable if we
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions regarding enrollment? Item 3, attendance update, Dr. Bryant.
The bus data?
Oh, attendance.
Oh, sorry, yep, you're right, sorry. Yep, so is this the first time we've brought this report? Second time, okay. So it's the same report, and you can see the percentages for each school on those reports.
Any questions or comments regarding attendance, Mr. Bollier?
Just thank you, because there's some, for consolidating some of the categories, because last time there was like one school at 100, and then next page was like 70, so definitely more accurate now, thank you.
All right, next item is the bus data.
Sorry, yeah, I have two different packets I'm looking from. Same thing, we monitor the bus numbers as well, so occasionally, and I don't think we've had to do it in the past month, but occasionally we may have to work with a family if a bus is full to find a different bus that is still nearby, but just to make sure that we're not overcrowding the buses.
All right, any questions or comments for the bus data? All right, next item is item 5, special education update by Mrs. Kalu. If you can join us, please.
Hi, everyone. So I included the snapshot for special ed for December, and I took some feedback from the last time, so it has like a little bit of a different section of it, but we'll sort of talk about that as we go. So as of December 18, the district had 908 students that were being served through special education between the ages of 3 and 22. 92 of them are preschool aged, and that increased from the beginning of the year and will likely continue to increase as students turn 3. And then the number for Wakefield students had decreased down to 28 Wakefield students, so that was a slight decrease with just students moving and whatnot. The next section here is the new section that I had added in. So I took the Scene Academy students and also the students that were in charter schools, because they were parentally placed in those different schools, into their own section, so it didn't look like it was like an added district or anything like that. So we have more than 10 students who are attending charter schools, and we have one more charter school too that we're working with for students. And then we have less than 5 students who are eligible for the service plans through Scene Academy. And then down below, we have the out-of-district students. So there are 77 students that are placed out of district. 18 of them are through at RLA right now, which is the program run through Rochester, which leaves it down to 59 students. Those 59 students are made up of students that the IEP team has determined a placement is needed for out of district. Court has placed them, or their DCYF involved, and they're receiving their education elsewhere. But we're still on the case because they are students of Rochester. On the next page, I included some information on the episode of treatment, which was something that was new this year. It had gone into effect in July. So I just gave you the definition from the case text about what the episode of treatment was. And then also included the new procedural safeguards, which were just updated in November of 2023. The last time they were updated was April of 2018, so it was a nice change with everything. And then the last one was just talking about referral meetings. And really since COVID, we've seen a lot more referral meetings happening. And we took some data to see, and we're about 200 meetings in this year, and which is on top of the 908 students that we have identified.
Any questions? Mrs. Stokes?
So I'm just thinking for next month.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that you have the child find, but
Yeah.
I think some of our new board members may not be as experienced with special education.
Yeah.
So could you maybe do something next month to kind of talk about child find and,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? Like what happens and the way that it goes? Because I think that would be really important for some new board members to hear.
Yep.
And then my next, and again, you don't have to do it all in 1 month, but my next request would be like maybe a presentation. So you kind of mentioned charter schools, like what happens if somebody's out of district or in a charter school, and what happens with special education, or if they have OT, PT speech, and who pays for it, the IEP process. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think you should put 2 in 1 month because I think that might be a lot, but I think those are really important things.
Yeah.
Again, because I think the board is changing to know, like, if somebody's in a charter school, who pays for that service, what the IEP team kind of makes up, and so that way. But I think the child find might be more important because we want to let people know, like, how we find their child, you know what I mean, like what that entails.
Yeah, and it's actually really good timing because next
Yeah.
month I'm doing a presentation with the district for different district certified staff on child find referral process and all of that part of it, just because we have lots of new teachers that have come in, and just with my experience too, we haven't had a lot of presentations for general ed teachers around special ed. So that was just a really big thing I wanted to do, and I also supported with everything this year, so.
And just one more little,
Yeah.
like, so when you do it, I think it'd be worthwhile for us to have like a slide sheet, you know what I mean? Something so that way they can look back, because it's a lot of information, and if you don't really work in the special ed field, I think it's just a lot to overcome, so
For you guys, for
just
the
like
board?
the new board, or
Oh,
do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't want to say it has to be like a slide presentation or anything, but just something so that,
I really do like slide presentations.
I do
so,
too, but
yeah.
I don't want to force it on you, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love a slide presentation,
Yeah.
but I just think something, so when, we talk about special ed or special services, like, we have that.
Yeah.
Mr. Quigley?
So, with the total number of students who are out of district,
Yeah.
when you talk about these numbers are currently in transition, so what happens in I guess, so you bulleted 3, the special ed students who are currently placed, JPPO, the DCYF placed, and episode of treatment placed.
Yeah.
What happens to those students in the transition? Like, you know what I mean? Are they sitting at home? Are they?
No, so really the IEP team determines what is needed for students. So they aren't sitting at home. We would be doing some kind of education. So we would be doing a plan to get them their education while also allowing for them to have their transition and get those needs.
Okay.
So it could look at like a half day, it could look like a full day. It really depends on the student's needs and where they're currently at.
And
So-
what's a typical, like, transition period? Is it weeks, months? I know things get drawn out. or
Yeah,
Potentially.
So it really will depend on the student and their needs. So sometimes it's difficult because some students will move into our district and they may be in an active placement search. And unfortunately, like many of our districts, out-of-district placements are a little challenging sometimes to find, just because lots of different reasons and funding, there's a lot of students that need those different kind of schools, so it really gets difficult. Sometimes it could be as easy as like 2 weeks kind of thing, sometimes it could be like a month or so. So, but during that time, we are continuing to work with the students.
So we're still providing a service?
We are, yes,
Even
yep,
though we're transitioning, we may be placing them out of district or whatnot?
Yes, yep.
but we are still
We are still-
maintaining
yes.
our service?
yep. And then until they go to an out-of-district placement and that out-of-district uses or completes those services, we'll be doing all of that because we are the LEA and we're the district of liability for those students.
Mr. Bulligan?
I think, just clarifying, are you looking for like an intro packet for the new board to understand what special services is?
Kind of like, yeah. I think there's a lot of things that, like, when you talk about special education that we just don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be good for this board to, you know
I
what I
would
mean?
have
Like,
loved it,
even-
that's why I'm just asking you,
Right,
like,
so, but
the
I'm just thinking, like,
definitions and faith
Well, I don't
and all
even
those
know that
things.
it's, I mean, we've had a lot of definitions, but I think it's like,
Like the new
as
board.
a typical parent, but I'm just saying with the new board coming up, like you kind of asked, like what transition means. And so if that person is transitioning, you know, when they transition, we still might be the district that has to pay for those services and what that, so I think too much is a lot. So I think starting with the child find and say, there's a child in the district that may have a disability. How do we find that? How do we look at it? I think the new board, it would be good to know that because that kind of starts younger. But then I also think like you kind of, and that was kind of my question for you is, when you're looking at services and they're moving and they're coming in or they're going out, like who pays for those services? Because I think that's important to know. So it all depends. So I think like a slide presentation, because you love that.
I do.
Would be really good to have, because if they go to a different, if they're a charter school, if they go to a private school, if they go to a special school, it all depends on where they're going as to who's paying for those services, and I think special ed budget is really big. And so I think having that breakdown, but I think having them both at the same night is gonna be a lot. So that's my next 2 months' hopes, but I think there'd be more.
Mr. Pappas?
Sorry.
Just real quick, you mentioned budget, and as soon as the new board comes in, we've got to start working on budget, and I know special ed consumes a significant number or amount of the budget. So I don't know if there might include some information that there's not a lot of wiggle room when it comes to special education, and we can't really cut it.
Right.
We have to provide it.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that, especially new members when they come on.
Okay, yeah, I can include that too.
Thank you.
And just to kind of follow up with what Karen was saying, some of our most vocal people are special ed parents that come in and say, we're not doing this, or we're not doing that, or whatnot. As a layperson that has never, I guess unfortunately, been exposed to special ed, or the need for special ed, or whatnot, I'm ignorant. And as most lay people are. I mean, I can go out in the community and people don't understand what's required by law. And it's easy to say, well, they'll do it. Well, they'll do it, costs money. There is no free and appropriate public education. Right? Somebody's paying for it. There's no such thing as a free and appropriate public education. So the education part of it for the layperson, and I totally agree, I wish it 4 years ago, you know, here's your welcome packet and here's what you need to know about special ed.
Yeah.
Because it is a huge, huge piece of the pie
Yeah.
that most people, myself, and I'm going to speak, but most people that have no exposure to it are totally ignorant to what's required or what's needed with it. And then you start throwing in the episode of treatment and all the other jargon that goes with it.
Yeah, and some of this stuff too, sorry, you may have okay, sorry. So some of this here where it talks about like those 3 areas at the bottom, those are ones that we necessarily as a district aren't involved with making those decisions. So like the episode of treatment isn't something that the Rochester School District is at the table to say, yeah, we think this is the appropriate placement, or the same with the JPPO. We are with DCYF and JPPO for like bid meetings and all those different things where we're talking about best interest determination meetings for students moving. But in the whole scheme, if they're moving all the way up north, then really it's, our hands are sort of tied at that point, so.
And
yeah.
again, as a
Yes.
layperson,
Yeah, you know.
I don't know
Right,
that.
right,
That's
right.
what,
That's
you
what-
know,
yes.
your specialty is.
Yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
again, with the comments that come in to us from the parents saying, you're not following the law, you're not
Yeah.
doing this, you're not doing that, you're not doing that.
yeah,
I sit here and go, the people that are paid and trained to do this are telling me we are.
yeah,
You know, I can sit here and read all the legal jargon. I'm not a lawyer,
right.
all right? You wanna talk fire codes, we'll talk fire codes, but,
I would have no idea at that point, so I don't know.
exactly, right?
I don't know.
We all have our
Yes,
specialties.
we do, yeah.
So I appreciate, you know, the background and
Yeah.
I kind of second with what you're talking about as far as bringing that baseline of information to new people.
Yeah,
Last point.
And I do want to say that I've heard wonderful things. So we, in this past 2 years since we've been on the board, have heard some really negative things. And I think it's kind of what you mentioned with the law, right? You can look at the law and you can read the law any way that you want to, and I think it makes it difficult. And I think you and I kind of had that conversation where sometimes it's just a conversation as saying, what is it that you're looking for and how can we help? And I just want you to know that I hear all the bad, unfortunately, because special ed's kind of like my thing. But lately, it's been really, really positive. And I think it's not necessarily that we're I think it's just you're opening that communication, which I think is really huge for our district. And I think that you're willing to have those conversations because we have some really tough special ed parents, I included, so I apologize. But
No, no.
the way in which that you've handled it from hearing it is
Yeah.
just been really, really positive, and I think we kind of need that because special ed is really tough. You have a child, you're fighting for services, you don't understand when you have a child. You, just like you said, right? Nobody knows when they're going to have a child with a disability.
Right.
So they're learning, they're fighting for their child. And
Yeah.
I just want to say in the last few months, it's been really, really positive. So I thank you because again, we hear about a lot of the negative things. As you've seen the last few months, people have come and you haven't really seen anybody. So that kind of speaks volumes, and I think we need to really point that out. So adding these things that we're gonna have and, you know what I mean, like those new things and kind of informing people also informs us, but it also lets the public know, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all that you've done, and it hasn't gone unnoticed because parents are really happy.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think for me, a big part of this is wanting to connect with our community and wanting to hear from them, wanting to see what we can do better and also just bridge that education side of it. Because I recently became a parent on the side of the table on the other side of being a parent and advocating for my child, and it was very humbling. It was
Yep.
completely being there, and I sat down, I've been in hundreds of thousands of meetings, and I got teary-eyed. So it's tough for parents, so just having that appreciation for sitting down that meeting, knowing that we're gonna be talking a lot of different things, and we try our hardest not to say any kind of jargon in those meetings because we're coming in and people are having all different kinds of experience. But a big part of it is what I can do to best support our community, and if that's also creating presentations, doing all that, that's what I wanna do. So I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah,
And I can
thanks.
definitely do that, because I'm excited actually. You're gonna get a really good Google slide hopefully, so.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate you, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Camus, for your report. Any other final questions, comments? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, item 6, incident reports and our backup. Dr. Bennett?
I believe this is what was requested the last month, which I think I had a misunderstanding about. So we have a safety committee that meets, I think, quarterly. And so these are the reports from the last meeting, the overall number. So the safety team or committee looks at the incident reports that come in. And I haven't been part of those meetings, but I know they meet and review and look at the incidents and have some conversations about that.
Okay. Mr. Downs?
Now, are we able to get these numbers quarterly?
Yes.
And
Yep.
same thing with like the ones you gave us last month, though, from with the overall reported behavior incidents. How
Sure.
often could we get those? Could those be a quarterly thing? I'm
Sure.
thinking every month is a little bit too much, but we get those quarterly as well, part of our packet. Because obviously, I know we've talked about, I think it's planning on talking about it beginning of the year, like in February or whatever, but just about what are we doing what are the actions are taken by the admin when people are incidents are happening, whether someone's being struck or what have you, classrooms are being evacuated. I think it needs to be more black and white. If a teacher or somebody is struck and wasn't an accident, whatever, I'm a strong believer in that student needs to be out of the school. They don't get to stay in the office. They need to go home, and parents need to deal with their kid. So I think we need to dig into that, where we stand on that. Because I don't know if our admin are worried that they can't suspend somebody because it's graduated sanctions, but I know I talked to our juvenile prosecutor at the PD, and when I asked her about how this goes about when somebody is struck, there's no reason why that student should still be in school. They should be sent home, plain and simple. So it's frustrating me that we're not doing that. We're not sending kids home. So it's something I plan on continuing to look into and looking at our policy, because we need to make sure the kids that are there to learn are safe, and we got to make sure our staff is safe.
Yeah, I have a problem with your strict send them home kind of policy, because you don't want anybody endangered.
Correct.
But I would think the policy might include, send them home that day, but then within 48 hours or 96 hours or something, the parents have to come in and you have to deal with it. I mean, I don't want a kid out of school for more than 24 hours, really. I just think that's a problem.
No, and I'm not saying send these kids home for a week and stuff like that, but correct me if I'm wrong, but when a kid gets suspended, for him to come back, the parents have to come back and have a meeting with the admin.
Okay.
And I think that's very important. But I'm not asking for kids to be sent home for a week, but I think there's...
And you gotta make sure there's somebody home.
Well, that's the thing. I know parents say they gotta work, they gotta do this, but unfortunately, they gotta have consequences as well for their kids' action. And then you can't just send a kid home and he's just gonna play video games, because he's just gonna do it all the time.
That's what I'm saying.
So the
You don't
parents
know.
need to make sure, you know what, you're inconveniencing me by pulling me getting out of work. That'll hopefully make the parents start having some kind of consequence at home for the student.
I don't think I wanna take money out of their pockets.
I'm not
because of
saying that, but
either.
there's gotta be something to make sure our students are safe, and so are our staff. It's just, you see
I agree.
these
I agree,
numbers,
but I
and
think
it's
there's a way to deal with
like
it.
48, because we're at a point where staff, if the admin not doing their job, the staff's gonna just start reporting this in a different way. I don't wanna do that, I think, because obviously when you get hit, you're assaulted, plain and simple.
I think it's important to see, I agree with you, we don't want kids just now roaming around the schools, and I don't think that's what Shane's meaning. But I think it's also important to realize that when a teacher has to deal with a behavior issue, it's now affecting the education of all those other students in the class.
I agree.
So I think we have to look at it in a multifaceted kind of thing, is, parents have to be some kind of responsible, because it's not on the responsibility of the school to punish your kids, or, you know what I mean? So I think there's like that happy middle where we have to say, a teacher wants to teach the other 24 kids in the classroom that's acting up, and that one student is now affecting that education of those other kids. But you're also right, you don't want a kid to just start misbehaving so they go home and play video games. So I think
And I don't wanna
there
send
is
them home
and
to
I
an
don't think
empty
that's what
house.
Shane means either, so, but I think we
Yeah.
have to start holding kids to a higher standard, because they're now affecting a classroom full of kids, and we have to start looking at that.
All right. Yep.
Do we have something, I know we talked a lot about it last month, but is there something planned for the new board looking into the procedures and maybe updating our procedures with our admin about when students or staff are assaulted, about what we're doing in our schools?
So, the School Board Association is coming in to
Gotcha.
talk about some policies, and I believe one of them is, I don't remember off the top of my
JIP,
head.
the bullying one, and
And-
then also I think, there's a few.
I think we talked to them about discipline,
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
that relates to discipline. If not, I can just make a note to make sure
Yeah,
that that's
just do
covered
we-
as well.
Cause I don't know, do we have a discipline like our policy that our admin follow?
There's a policy that talks about those graduated sanctions and things
Yeah.
like that, and there is required language in there. So we can make sure that that's part of that conversation, just so that layer is covered for
Yeah, cause everything I
that
looked,
lens, that perspective.
cause everything I looked into, everything, I could not see anything that said that if a student assaulted, that we have every right to send them home when somebody is assaulted purposely. And that's why I'm just frustrated that we're not doing that.
Do you know the law changed in 2021, and that prevents schools from sending students out of school suspension? It has to be pretty
No, when you assault
gross,
somebody.
egregious, like really egregious
When you
for
ass-
them to go out of
And that's
school
a-
because the law changed.
And that's what I'm talking about, assaulting somebody is egregious, you're assaulting somebody.
And it might be helpful also if I look into, like some examples of student interaction, so what that actually meant. Was it a full-on hit, or was it, just to give the committee a little bit more information about what we're talking about in that category, so I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Next item is 5-year, so for special services, for our quarterly meeting, we just updated that the chorus and band space hopefully will be completed this summer to repair the floor and replace the walls and change the configuration a little bit. And athletic fields and lighting, drainage, so that keeps coming up, especially recently, so we've considered maybe moving that up to the top and focusing on that. And that kind of is a crossover with building committee. And then the enrollment data for the GIS map, we're a few months out. We should be getting that presentation in a few months. They're working on it, and they've changed their coding to not include the purple, I think it was, which was like the upcoming, proposed
Approved but not being
constructions.
built.
Yeah, because we've seen that they've been approved 25 years ago and still haven't been built yet, so they've kind of eliminated that category, and they're just looking at the ones actually in construction. So we'll see that in a few months. I think that was it for
They don't have.
yeah, for 5-year. All right, next is public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the committee? All right, there being none, I'll close public comment. Next is other. Does anyone have anything under other? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries.